Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Guys, we have something to discuss today that you are not hearing on any other channels, I absolutely guarantee you. This is big because it means that there is a war brewing under the surface that nobody is talking about. We're going to talk about it today, among other things. There's a lot of news today, as you can imagine, with the market still tanking today. So, what we need to talk about first is cyber attacks that are occurring right now, or at least I believe to be occurring. Now, I want to quickly share with you an article that was released in April, okay, only a couple months ago. Liquefied natural gas facilities and electric power sites across America appear to be targets of attempted cyber attacks. So they were already being subject to cyber attacks. A joint advisory comes from the Department of Energy, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the FBI, and the NSA, alerting to the threat of cyber attack on American energy industries. Now, why is this so important? Well, the alert did not detail which U.S. sites were affected, nor did it explain how the malware was discovered, but said it was caught before an attack was attempted. Now, why is this so important? Okay, today there was a very large gas field that was on fire in Russia after a pipe bursts. Now, a fire was extinguished and the production apparently has not been affected, Russian authorities claim. However, it's, we can't really take them on their word for that because it appears that there's a lot of places, both in the United States and Russia and Ukraine for that matter, who are not admitting when they're subject or victims of a cyber attack. Like, they'll talk about the threat of it, but when one actually happens, it appears that they're not admitting it. And why do I say this? Well, yesterday, I reported on the Freeport liquefied natural gas facility, which is going to be suspending operations basically till the end of the year as a result of some kind of fire that took place at the facility. Now, what kind of coincidence is it that just a month ago, they were warning us about cyber attacks on liquid natural gas facilities? They specifically said that one of the biggest liquefied natural gas facilities in the United States, in Texas, is now being shut down, okay, basically for the remainder of the year. They said there might be partial operation towards the end of the year. This is 20% of U.S. liquefied natural gas exports. Who relies on liquefied natural gas right now? Well, all of Europe, okay, because they have obviously sanctioned Russia, and that is restricting liquefied natural gas, that's restricting natural gas flows, and so they're relying on liquefied natural gas from the United States and elsewhere. Now, just yesterday, Gazprom, Russia's national gas agency, had said that they're going to be cutting the supply to Europe by 60%. Okay, this is on the heels of this liquefied natural gas shortage. And there always was a shortfall. Like the amount of gas that Europe needs could never be met strictly by liquefied natural gas in the first place. But this additional cut, of course, seen the price spike dramatically. And now, today, you have Russia's largest gas field is on fire after a pipe burst. So does that start to sound like there is a real cyber war being waged on our critical infrastructures? I mean, we've known since 2021 when the Russians did another gas facility. What pipeline was that? I can't remember the exact name of the pipeline, but I know it was mainstream news. And so this is very, very important because this means that in the background, this war is being waged, which is just another indicator that the war we're seeing, the kinetic one right now, is in an escalatory state. Now, we're going to talk about the markets in a bit. On the topic of, and this is kind of a funny story, UE eyes Israeli natural gas in deal with Egypt. So EU is going to be getting natural gas from Israel. That's going to solve all their problems. Guess how much natural gas Israel supplies the world? I think it's like 0.9%, okay? Not even at 1 percentage point. So you can forget about Europe's needs being met by Israeli natural gas. Anyways, I just thought that was funny because they thought that was newsworthy, as if to say, you know, it was almost like one of these stories they put out to try to calm down the public, because I'm sure the public's freaking out in Europe right now because Russia could entirely cut them off in winter. And if that happens, which, you know, I don't think is going to happen entirely, but if they turn down the tap a lot, or if this war escalates, it is going to be hell in Europe. I mean, it is going to be hell. I don't know how people are going to be able to heat their homes, especially if the cyber thing ratchets up. Now, if Russia did shut down this liquid natural gas facility, that is a testament to their capabilities when it comes to cyber and just the vulnerabilities of our grid in that respect. Now, I'm not saying it is. I don't have any proof that it is, but it's just one of those things that's so coincidental that it almost, you know, it just seems like there has to be something behind it that we don't know. And then now today, Russia's largest gas field on fire, that, I don't know, that's strange. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. Now, but we're going to get back to the Russia-Ukrainian situation and some interesting stuff about how the war may well escalate in the next few months. But before we do that, let's just touch on the markets. Okay, the markets were in the crapper again today. NASDAQ down another 4%. It bounced a little bit yesterday, and sure enough, it is downtown Charlie Brown. Now, a veteran investor and Bitcoin bull, Michael Novogratz, says the economic outlook is not too rosy. And this is from Market Watch, which is one of the, you know, they're on the level of Bloomberg or the Financial Times. The economy is going to collapse, he says. He's a Wall Street veteran, and he says that the economy is going to collapse. We're going into a really fast recession. Now, I'm not sure if he means that we're going to be going through a recession and it's going to be quick, or if we're just going to go quickly into a recession. One positive thing people keep referencing is that, you know, compared to other times when we were in a recession, people are employed. But what's likely going to happen now that prices are rising so much and the producer price index is so high, there's a lot of companies that are probably going to go out of business, because you're going to get people who start, you know, pushing with the unions. We're already seeing that in terms of the Pacific Northwest shipping, I can't remember it is, but there's a union that represents people who work in shipping containers on the West Coast. And they're now in talks because, of course, the price of living is getting so high that everybody wants more wages. And if people can't get the wages they want, then, you know, or if the companies just can't afford to pay them, then you're going to start seeing businesses suffer. And of course, with rising interest rates, people are not going to be able to borrow the money they need in a way which is lucrative. And then, of course, the debt that we already have to service, be it federal or in our private lives, is going to cost us more. And of course, that's going to take away from our ability to spend money on stuff and yada, yada, yada. We go into a recessionary, possible depressionary debt cycle. So it's not looking good. This is the front page of Market Watch. The economy is going to collapse. All right. Now, before I get into that, I want to just give you guys an example of inflation. Now, since 2020, we've been warning about the inflation bubble. I've shown you guys numerous products. I always give you a heads up before the price spike. We talk about Berkey water filter systems, which the price on those went up nearly 30%. Okay, and the price on Berkeys right now is just like, I don't even know. I don't know how they're able to pull it off, to be brutally honest. I mean, we sell Berkey products. They're the best water filter system on the market. But, you know, so if you got in when I gave you that heads up before the price went up 30%, great. We also talked about Silky Saws. Now, when I promoted Silky Saws, I told you guys that the price was going up 20%. Little did I know that the price was actually going to go up closer to 40%. So these saws right here, this is just a few of their saws. They have hundreds of different types of saws. This is a Japanese company, the best saws in the world. And that's the only reason why we carry their stuff. These saws went up nearly 40%. These are the Outback saws, okay? This is probably the best survival saw, the portable survival saw. Comes in 3 sizes, okay? And if there ever was a saw that you would want in your Bugout bag, you would want this. And part of the reason why is because you can buy extra blades for them, okay? But the blades, you're probably not going to need to replace them that often, if at all, because they do have, they're extra thicker than Silky's normal arborist blades. Because when I met with the owner of Silky Saws many years ago, he flew here from Japan, and I took him around the town, showed him some museums and exhibits and stuff like that. It was fun. And I told him at the time, I'm like, look, you got to make a saw that is for bushcrafters, outdoor enthusiasts, survivalists, preppers. And a few years later, lo and behold, they came up with something, and they came up with this. And this has their usual impulse hardening, which makes their blades 3 times stronger. So you don't need to sharpen them nearly as often as you would other saws. It has a black plating on it to prevent from corrosion and just make it super strong. So honestly, if you were to, if you had to go on an extended outing or an extended wilderness survival stint, getting yourself one of these saws with a extra blade would be ideal. But like I said, had you got in when I said, a year ago or so, before the prices went up, you would have saved yourself 40%. Now those things are 40% more. I don't know what's going on in Japan where they manufacture them. Apparently the economy is not that good. But anyways, guys, so all I'm saying is the price on all of this stuff is expected to go up. I was just talking to Worksharp the other day, who makes this little gadget here. I'll save that one for another day though, but their prices are going up. Everybody's prices are going up. Food is skyrocketing. 8 million Australians urged to turn off the lights. Okay, Australia's energy minister has urged households in New South Wales, a state that includes the country's biggest city in Sydney, to switch off their lights in face of an energy crisis. What's behind the energy crisis? Well, they can't get enough coal to power their plants, and of course the rising cost of energy, and a record cold snap in the southern hemisphere. Meanwhile, in the northern hemisphere, heat waves reaching record-breaking temperatures that are persisting, of course, are putting more, whether it's extreme cold or extreme hot, it requires more energy for climate control, which puts more stress on a grid which is already pushed to the limit when you have these possible cyber attacks occurring, among other things. More than 65 million Americans are currently experiencing exceptional drought. 65 million Americans. The water shortage is real. I was talking to an atmospheric scientist yesterday. We're going to release that video soon. And some of the stuff she was telling me, I asked her, what do you think the prognosis here? And she just shook her head and she said, it's bad. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be displaced as a result of the coming water shortage crisis. So just one more thing for you to keep in mind. Thousands of cattle reported dead. I'm not sure if you've seen the video yet circulating, but there was a feedlot due to record temperatures. These cows, basically 10,000 of them, croaked belly up due to their inability to cool themselves. Now, this is not totally uncommon, but I think in the numbers that were killed, that was exceptional, okay? And heat stress and feedlots seem to start every year around June, he said, but this was an exceptional loss, which is why we've seen that video footage of 10,000 cows lying dead. Now, where should we go from here? Okay, so we got what are being referred to as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Macron, the president of Italy, who else? Was it not Boris Johnson? Some other president from somewhere. Anyway, they went to Ukraine for a Photoshop, shake the hands of Zeke and, pretend like they're going to do something, I guess. Anyways, Ukraine has vowed to reclaim Crimea with U.S. weapons. They persist. And this is why I think that the diplomatic game is is a losing battle at this point, even though Jake Sullivan has said that he thinks that the only way out of this is through diplomacy. But meanwhile, on the same day, they're sending $1 billion in weapons, which are only going to intensify the conflict. And when I say intensify it, I mean intensify it immensely. They're basically putting the Russians in a position where ultimately they are going to have to continue westward in order to have the security guarantee that they need. Because if they're making threats like this, that, hey, we are going to blow up, I think there's like one of the biggest bridges in Europe, links Crimea to Ukraine. They're threatening to blow that up, like explicitly. I don't know if I have that article here somewhere, but there's a bridge that they're explicitly stating they're going to blow up with these new weapons they received. So how do you think that's going to be received by the Ruskies? And I think that the Russians are still, they still got some revenge planned for a lot of things that have happened, like the sinking of the Moskva, among other things. I think there's going to be retaliations. So as much as I want to hope that the narrative is shifting towards one of reconciliation and peace and diplomacy, when you have these other stories coming out on the same day claiming that we're going to reclaim Crimea with U.S. weapons, I mean, is that just hot air? Is that just a part of the PR campaign to keep, Ukrainian people, especially the ultra-proud nationalistic ones, to keep them feeling as though they have a chance in the fight? What is the purpose of this? Okay? And it also reiterated in this article that Ukraine backtracked on its promise, stating that it would use U.S.-supplied rocket systems to strike its neighbor's territory should it deem such attacks necessary. And again, what happens when Russia officially decides to annex, or if they put it to some sort of referendum as to whether or not these breakaway republics want to be usurped by Russia? Is an attack on that going to constitute an attack on Russia, and what sort of implications will that have? Does that mean, like Russia has claimed that they are going to do, does that mean that they are going to start attacking decision-making centers, meaning Poland, Baltic states, possibly even the United States, which we're seeing in these cyber attacks? Now, there's this article on Zero Hedge. I want to share a little bit with you, but we're also going to talk about these 2 American fighters who were captured by Russia and Ukraine. A friend of mine thinks this is very significant. I'm going to share my opinion on that in just a minute. And that's very important because this is one point of potential escalation that could bring the United States into fully, a World War III scenario. World War III light, perhaps, first before all-out World War III. Now, Russia believes that a false flag will lead to U.S. entry into the war. This needs to be emphasized, what Russia thinks. This is not what I think, but this is what some of their officials and foreign defense policy makers think. Okay, Dmitry Trenin addressed the Council for Foreign Defense Policy, and basically he outlined what he thinks is going to potentially happen. It's a very interesting article, okay? He thinks that the Ukraine war is going to spread to the east. The war in Ukraine will extend beyond the borders of Ukraine proper. This proxy war with NATO can balloon into a real one between Russia and the US in 3 years or less, he says. Russian supply chains will be reconstructed. Now, Russia has prepared for this war, he claims, and this is true with any country that has been living under sanctions, is that you are forced to be independent. You are forced to have your own industry at home where you make everything domestically and minimize your reliance on globalism. They nationalized Russian foreign-held assets, affected import substitutions, and reworked strategic industry operations, including eliminating foreign managerial influence. China versus the U.S. military is coming, he believes. They believe the Ukrainian war will eventually include China facing off with the U.S. militarily. And obviously, he's not the only one who believes that. Gold, commodity-backed alternative to the United States dollar. I've been talking about this quite a bit. It doesn't get enough attention in the whole talk about inflation and the economy. Is the U.S. dollar's position as the global reserve currency is at great risk with what's happening right now. And if Russia wins the war definitively and all of their demands are achieved and they go on to continue in a manner which is more imperialistic and they keep expanding their empire, if you will, that could potentially, mark the end or the beginning of the end of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Not just because of the ruble, but of course the yuan and other alternatives, because that's when people start losing faith in the US economy. And this is why all of these things, these dominoes, can just start to fall at once, because if the US economy goes into a deep, long recession or possible depression, then obviously the rest of the countries in the world will suffer the same fate. But depending on how this war goes, if this decoupling benefits the East more than it does the West, and that's when people start to say, you know what, we don't want these dollars anymore. We want to start trading in rubles and yuans. Okay, let's just skip ahead here to the false flag juiciness. Success in achieving Russia's objectives in Ukraine will provide a solid foundation for bringing other countries into the country's fold of building a new system of international relations together with non-Western countries and the formation in cooperation with them of a new world order. So is this the end game? Is this the master plan, if you will, of the Kremlin? Some people would say, no, that's just propaganda. This is just propaganda. Maybe it is, but if the Russians are winning and, they start to get confident, they might just say, hey, the ruble's doing great. Our economy is still doing good. Oil is sky high. Maybe we should just keep this going. We got the nukes in the back seat just in case. You never know what they're gonna say. They talk more about the dollar death. And they talk about the coming war with the United States. Dmitry Trenin, which is, why would they be spending billions of dollars on Sarmat missiles? We're going to have Peter Pry on again at the end of the month, because there's some people who still don't understand the realities of nuclear war. And I'm not talking about how it wouldn't be survivable by anybody. There are people who think it would be survivable. And there are people with their fingers hovering over the button. Dmitry Trenin is saying that Russia is preparing for a protracted war and that war will spread to between the United States and China. So he says there's 3 ways that Ukraine war is likely to play out. And this is the Zero Hedge author, okay? One is that it stops at the Donbass and they're able to develop some sort of diplomacy. I personally can't see that being, it would be very short-lived, because think about how many people have been affected by this war, okay? You have thousands, tens of thousands of casualties on, well, we don't know if it's on either side, but let's just say we have tens of thousands of casualties. And all of those people, many of them are going to have personal vendettas. And how are you going to coexist in such a society after all that has taken place? Even through diplomacy, it's just going to be like a smoldering under the surface and just waiting for the fire to flare up again. So I just cannot see how it ends in the Donbass. That would be great, but not when you're sending billions of dollars of weapons. And this billion, I don't know if this is even out of the 40 billion or what, but anyways, it's only the tip of the spear. Poland and Romania attack Russian flanks. This is another possibility. I'm not sure because this would be suicide really for Poland. The second scenario is an escalation of conflict which involves the coalition of Little Europe under the auspices of Britain. This scenario includes the entry into the war of Poland and a number of Central European countries, mainly Romania. And I'm guessing this is after things start to disintegrate in a way I just articulated. Lastly, it's a false flag that leads to the United States entry. A third scenario will happen if Britain decides to turn the board over to bring down the entire political structure in Europe, bringing the level of confrontation to the risk of a direct conflict between Russia and the United States. Now, here's what this is what the Russians think, not me. Or is this might be Zero Hedge. Okay, this actually might be Zero Hedge's extrapolation of the Russians. Even though I've heard the Russians and both the United States talk about how the other side is going to do some kind of false flag, right? This scenario will be realized through the creation of a controlled catastrophe in Ukraine and a successful military coup. The catastrophe most likely will be a detonation of a nuclear charge in a large Ukrainian city. Then blame it on Russia. So, what do you guys think would happen? Do you think that dropping a nuke in Ukraine somewhere would bring the United States and the rest of the world into a war? Would that bring us close to nuclear Armageddon? Because a lot of people think, well, of course, if that happened, we would get involved. But would we? In what capacity would we? Do the Russians believe we would? That is the question. Because there is even doubts that if Russia attacked NATO countries, whether or not the United States would intervene. We say we would, but in what capacity? Article 5 is not absolute. That's the article that dictates if you attack one NATO country, then the rest of NATO is inclined to help you out. Will they, though? That's the question. Now, 2 American fighters are believed captured by Russian Ukraine. Now, 2 American citizens and military veterans who are fighting alongside Ukraine forces were captured. But, and this is the big but, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said on June 16th in a televised program that Washington had not contacted Moscow regarding the 2 U.S. citizens. And this doesn't appear to be getting a lot of media attention at all. And that could be a double-edged sword, I guess, because on the one hand, they probably don't want to draw attention to the fact that there are Americans fighting in Ukraine. But on the flip side, a friend of mine believes that this could be the start of a drama if these guys are paraded in front of a kangaroo court, military kangaroo court of sorts, where they are sentenced to death, and this creates outrage amongst Americans. I don't know at this point. I think people are so desensitized. I don't know if this would be enough to, compel Americans into a full-on war. Now, it's definitely going to add to the justification to intervene in some way, shape, or form. But by itself, I don't think it has a whole lot of weight. It really depends, though. It depends on, if they turn this into a soap opera in the news, which it doesn't appear like they're going to because they haven't yet. It's hard to say, though. What else do we have to talk about today? Oh, yes. U.S. is going to provide Ukraine with intelligence data for accurate multiple rocket launcher strikes. Now, any thinking person knows that they've been doing this already. Because, obviously they've been doing this already. But now they're being explicit about it in the fact that we will provide the Ukrainians with what they need to strike selected targets on Ukrainian territory, said the Pentagon's Deputy Secretary for Political Affairs, Colin Cole. It sounds like Colin Powell. During a conference held by the Center for New American Security in Washington. We expect these systems to be in combat soon. So what this is going to allow them to do is target with extreme accuracy, with the precision of airstrikes without wasting any ammunition. Now, if you're explicitly saying, hey, we're providing you with the weapons, you've just captured American soldiers, and we're going to give you all of the information you need to attack Russians. How do you think Russians are going to view this kind of thing? They already view themselves. They already know they're at war with the United States, but that is just going to be one more nail in the coffin. And when I say the nail in the coffin, I mean our collective coffin that's going to be mired by a mushroom cloud. Now, this is interesting as well. And this is scary as well in the sense that it could lead to a major escalation in the war. Now, the U.S. has backed an idea of another European military bloc. UK, Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltic states, its envoy to NATO says. The permanent representative to NATO, Julian Smith, said on Tuesday that Washington would want to support the idea of a new security alliance, which could reportedly include Ukraine, the UK, Poland, the Baltic states, and possibly Turkey. Guess what that means? That means you don't need NATO. You don't need Article 5. And I think the reason why they're saying possibly Turkey, is probably in reference to the fact that Turkey is putting up a bit of a fight about Sweden and Finland joining NATO, and maybe leaving that door open. But when they say possibly, it almost seems like they're trolling Turkey in a sense, saying that, you know, you could be part of this if you want. I can't see Turkey going for it because they're really on the fence when it comes to their support for Russia. Ukrainian President Zelensky has not yet responded to European Commonwealth proposal. This is what they're calling it, the European Commonwealth, as he is waiting for the outcome of an EU summit on June 23rd, which will let them know whether or not they're going to be members of the EU. So, Commonwealth. So this is under the auspices of Queen Elizabeth? I don't know. Yeah, so the EU premier is called to immediately grant Ukraine candidate status. So they want to bring him into the EU right away. Russia has banned dozens of British journalists, media, so pretty much everything from BBC to Sky News, The Times, The Guardian. They've all been kicked out, which is definitely not a point of de-escalation. McDonald's, Coca-Cola, all the big names have now been changed to other Russian generic brands. So, you know, the decoupling is real. Here's that article about Ukraine threatening to destroy Europe's longest bridge. Crimea Bridge is target number 1 for Western weapons, says Major General Dmitry Marchenko said on Wednesday. The Kerch Bridge is absolutely our number 1 target. Wow. So shit's going to go down. China has reaffirmed its support for Russia. The Chinese and Russian leaders speak by phone and agree the need for mutual support on security issues. Putin stressed that Moscow opposes any external forces' attempts to interfere in China's internal affairs. Does that mean that Putin has just extended the nuclear umbrella, the Russian nuclear umbrella that is, to China? Only time will tell. And the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said that the West is yet to face the worst in confronting Russia. He says, we are not even close to the culmination of the crisis. And this guy is typically pretty passive when he talks to media. So for him to say that is, you know, fairly significant. But, you know, he's saying that what I think we all know, especially if you've watched this channel for a long time, that this situation could get much worse than it is. You know, the only thing we kind of have going for us right now is that unemployment isn't that bad. And that could, like I say, go south very quickly. And if we get into that vicious downward spiral, and if this war does take a turn for the worse, then, you know, who's to say what the ultimate outcome can be. And yeah, so just more articles about how U.S.-Russia relations are at an all-time low. 2 weeks left to demine the Ukrainian ports, according to the Italian Prime Minister. That's the time that's left to get the grain out. He says time is running out to prevent the irreparable damage, which is going to be caused by a lack of access to safe corridors for grain deliveries to the rest of the world. Baby formula shortage takes another hit. There was another baby formula manufacturer whose plant was shut down over a suspected, it was flooding this time. Flooding, heavy rains, thunderstorms, and that's going to cause the plant to shut down for a few weeks, which is going to create more problems. India is facing protests, ironically, because they're not putting as much money into their military anymore. They've decided, well, actually, that's not true. That's not true at all. They basically just said, hey, we're not going to track you into like a pension. Like it used to be a career. Now there's going to be a 4-year limit on your participation in the military, which is actually a sign that they're preparing for war as well. Because, they just don't want to have to pay people out their pensions and have people making a career in the military unless you are, of course, very exceptional. There's some stuff going on in China with respect to bank runs. I'm not even going to begin to try to get into it. I just don't know enough about it. But things aren't all good and dandy in China either. That's all you need to know. But go and do more research if you want to know more. Lots of countries continue to prohibit wheat and other food commodities from being exported. One of those is the United Arab Emirates, who happens to be a very wealthy country. The FBI is investigating US-made chips that are in Russian tanks. And they're talking about how they're doing this investigation about, companies who might have worked with Russia and sent chips that were either made in the US or Taiwan to Russia. But the thing is that the raw materials to make those chips, a lot of that stuff comes from China and Russia. Like the gases, the argon, neon, things of that nature are required to make the chips, and those come from Russia. So, it's in a globalized world to try to point the finger at somebody over this is kind of stupid. And unfortunately, ladies, I don't know much about this, but apparently you might be suffering from a tampon shortage soon as the price of menstrual products goes up. So not a good day, not a good year for anybody who has to use the washroom sitting down. UK food prices could spike to 15% interest this summer. Not good. I mean, I'm just getting tired of this. It's just bad news after bad news. But, at least we're prepared. I got my indoor gardening going. I can't wait to show you guys this. You're going to love it, man. We've put a lot of work. Special thanks again to Gardening in Canada. Go check out our YouTube channel, a wealth of information. And it's not until you meet someone like this that you realize how little you know about gardening, even if you know a lot. To meet a soil scientist and explain how important soil is to the whole equation is made me feel really dumb. And every time she comes, it makes me feel even dumber. You can support the channel by supporting yourself, as I usually say. Get yourself a Silky Gomboy saw. Your ability to procure firewood, especially if you live in Poland, apparently, where the Polish government is going to be relaxing some restrictions which might have impeded people's ability to acquire wood for fuel to heat their homes this winter. You better be out there harvesting firewood. If you got yourself a wood stove, better stock up. Start stocking up now before the panic sinks in September and people realize, how am I going to heat my ass this summer? And you can't go wrong with a Silky. It's just Japanese-made, 100-year-old company. They take a lot of pride in what they do. And I know the owner, and I know the primary distributors, and they're all, top-notch people. So go and check it out, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and please share your opinions on what we talked about in the comment section below. And if you would, I know this is asking a lot. I've asked you for 10 different things, but like and share the video. Thanks, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.